Welcome back to Streaming Media Connect 2024. I am Steve Nathans-Kelly, Editor-in-Chief of Streaming Media, and I want to welcome everyone to our game plan, monetizing live sports streaming through security, scale, sync, and searchability. This panel is brought to you by EasyDRM, and Olga Kornienko from EasyDRM will be with us for the panel. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. So the music you were hearing as we were walking in, so to speak, if you were the first person to correctly name the artist and the track, and you are here at the end of the session, you'll be able to win a $50 Amazon gift card, but you must be present to win. Chat in the chat, and we'll also have the Q&A open, and we'll be taking questions at the end of the panel. So if you have questions for the panel, put those in the Q&A panel, and that's where we'll see them. And we'll get to as many as we can in the time that we have at the end of the session. So recorded videos from all of the sessions this week will be on the Streaming Media YouTube channel. Some of them are up there already. And the link for that is also in the chat. And join us back here, right back here, February 25th to 27th, 2025 for Streaming Media Connect 2025, when we do all this again. And now I'd like to invite to the stage CJ Leonard from Mad Leo Consulting, who's the moderator for this session. CJ, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. So yeah, let's get started.
All right. So I'd like to invite all of my panelists to the stage right now. You can take your cameras and mics off. I'll do a quick intro on, as mentioned, Steve mentioned the title, but what I think we'd like to go through today is, it's been a big year in sports with the Olympics, streaming first events, new entrants in the sports rights arena. Plus, we just obviously went through a presidential election that requires the same levels of engagement that the Super Bowl does. So this panel will examine the state of sports, as well as live streaming overall, its day-to-day challenges, how tech debt and technological shortcomings directly impact monetization, and what everyone is looking forward to in 2025. Some of the problems that we discussed on the prep calls are problems we've had for years. How do we see them getting resolved? So I'd like to ask everyone on my panel to you can introduce yourself. Let's start with Olga.
Hi, thank you, CJ. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Olga Kornienko. I'm the COO and co-founder of EasyDRM. And just in case you don't know, EasyDRM, we are a hosted managed DRM as a service provider. Thank you.
Next up will be Jared Wilichinsky.
Hi, I'm Jared Wilichinsky. I oversee global digital operations for Paramount, responsible for, all the random ad ops crap we have to do.
My name is Narendra. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Victory Plus and at APMC. I'm involved in almost all aspects of a business that is trying to reinvent our sports and Major League Sports scene in America. We're perhaps the first streaming service to take Major League Sports for free to viewers in the US, and it involves a bunch of challenges that I'm hoping we'll be able to dive into today. Very happy to be here.
I'll go next. Hey, folks. Rob Hazan, VP of Product, Streaming TV at Index Exchange. It's a pleasure to be here today and pleasure to be on stage with all these awesome esteemed panelists. And yeah, I'm responsible for monetization on our exchange, and spend most of my time these days on streaming TV. Come from kind of a long background in web and mobile app as well, but today we'll be talking about streaming TV a lot. And on the side, also do a lot of work with standards and protocols, including co-authoring the OpenRTB 2.6 spec that we use for a lot of monetization of live events today.
And finally, hello everyone, my name is Jack. I'm a principal analyst at Ampere Analysis. We're a data and research firm based in London, although we operate globally. Me and my team, I head the sports team here at Ampere, which essentially is responsible for researching and analyzing media rights deals, sports rights deals across the world, and strategies when it comes to sports rights distribution and monetization.
Thank you, everyone. So I'm excited to have everyone here. Everyone comes from a different area of the streaming supply chain. And so with that, one of the big topics that always comes up, aside from monetization, how do we generate revenue? But monetization and scale. So first question for today is, and I'll start with Jared here, but I'd love everyone's perspective on this. What challenges do streamers face when it comes to live and scaling issues?
Everything. I mean, look, you start at the bare bones of what you're trying to accomplish. If someone hits play and you want the stream to start quick and you want it to keep running as long as they want to watch it, like that alone is a challenge. Throw advertising into it. You're going from, I don't know, let's say 5 vendors just for that simple concept to 500 vendors to power a robust advertising ecosystem. And they all have every link in that chain has a problem that you have to be aware of. And it breaks in real time, and you have to be able to react in real time to do it. And I think it takes a lot of time, energy, and resources to be able to kind of monitor and know what to look for in those 500 vendors, and each one has 500 links. So you try to do that at scale on a big event. Time is money. So being able to identify those quickly and react is key.
And I know you just went through the elections last week, your organization with everything, and so many players that get involved. And one of the things that came up with Olga, I'll toss it to you, Olga. We tend to, I come from the monetization background and from the ad side, ad tech. And Olga, you were mentioning some conversations yesterday around where DRM and other surrounding tech upstream from the ad tech side of things can also impact monetization. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I guess the DRM, and I was going to add on to Jared's comment about, what can go wrong, or what to look out for is scale. You obviously, you don't know if 5 people are going to watch it or 5 million, right? And as a vendor of just one specific item, we have to be able to react and say, hey, oh my God, all of a sudden, something happened and now half the country wants to see this. Let's go. But yeah, DRM is you guys are talking about monetization using ads, but DRM enables you to take a piece of content and demo it in various different ways. If you take a sporting event, since we're talking about sports here, and chunk it out and then just show different pieces of it and continue to remonetize the same exact piece of content from different perspectives or in different situations, and live VOD, replay, and so on, while still maintaining rights, that is also a big deal. Because at the end of the day, if you have somebody like Paramount that offers their content to however many hundreds of then thousands of downstream distributors, if one of them leaks a piece of content, it affects everybody. So having good security in place everywhere and be able to keep monetizing different the same content from different people and different perspectives is very, very important.
I'll add another piece here of what makes this challenging, because we've had sort of large scale events on digital media for a long time, right? And those things are very different on the web than they are for like a live event, right? So let's say some newsworthy event happens and everyone rushes to to their browser to read an article about it or whatever. Those people are coming in over a relatively long period of time. As folks hear about the thing, they go to their browser. Like all of those bid requests, all of the requests for ads to show those people, they're all getting spread out over large portions of time. Meanwhile, when it comes to like a live sporting event, no one wants to be on a stream that's delayed by 10 minutes or something, right? Like no one wants to get text messages from their friends and, hey, did you see that touchdown? And like you still haven't seen it yet, right? And so everyone's trying to distribute those streams as close as they reasonably can to real time, which means that when someone at the broadcast center hits the button that says it's time for an ad break, that across all those devices, that that massive footprint that's watching that event, all those requests are coming at very high concurrency. So it's not just the scale. But maybe this is to be even more precise here from the ad tech guy, it's the concurrency, right? It's the fact that all that scale comes in such a short period of time, and that's what causes various pieces of the tech stack to fall apart. That's the hard part.
Definitely. And I think Narendra and Jack, you might have some other thoughts too. Sports betting has blown up over the last couple of years. It's only going to continue to grow. I was talking to Olga about the requirements there, but sports betting, what challenges does that cause Narendra with your platform or Rob or Olga? How does that impact you guys with sports betting in the same vein?
Well, I think you can look at it at a broader demand partner sort of problem as well, right? Sports betting is one of the use cases where you have, which shows up in multiple ways across how the stream gets treated. So they will show up both as a demand partner, they'll show up in terms of wanting to interact with the users that are viewing a stream in a specific format, and they want some sort of connectivity between what they might be, how they're activating the audience that you might be bringing to them, right? And understanding the difference between what is possible technically and how to sort of manage that within the regulatory frameworks that apply to industries like betting is an interesting sort of challenge to navigate and force. And I can understand why that becomes more complicated the more fragmented your media footprint is, right? So for someone like us that is streaming only, it is in part a simpler problem than for somebody who's trying to broadcast on linear, on cable, and on stream at the same time simultaneously, and sort of navigating that so there are multiple challenges that come in over there. And I think those are challenges that aren't purely a technical solve and not purely a regulatory solve and not purely a communication solve. It's a combination of the three, and the complexity that arises from trying to solve all three at the same time is something that we have to sort of build the muscle to be able to navigate as media owners or media publishers, and sort of figure out how to sort of navigate that going forward. That's one of the things that I spend a fair bit of time on now. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can add one thing, I think it's always important to stress that why it's so important to sort of do it right. In other words, like for lack of obviously much better technical words, because obviously, first of all, consumer expectation, especially after having spent decades watching live sports on traditional TV, when it comes to streaming, the expectation is increasingly the same in terms of quality, in terms of latency, in terms of being able to switch from one feed to the other, etc. If anything, actually, with streaming and with the additional possibilities, things that you can layer over the stream, being betting stats or additional sort of more complex stats or anything else, multiple viewing screens, that, if anything, actually adds expectations. And also, finally, there's a competition element, because if the stream fails, if the experience is not quite to the level that the consumer expects, they can just switch to probably like, Twitter feed or a social feed anyway that provides them with clips and with live commentary. So it's incredibly, the way in which the salient moments of a game are transmitted and consumed, are increased enormously. So streaming, needs to be perfect so that people just don't essentially wander off.
Yeah, and I actually think the expectation on streaming right now is higher than it was on TV. Because I guess with the younger generation, especially, who grew up on internet and everything, it's like, what do you mean my stream hasn't loaded in half a second? What is going on? My attention span is this big. I'm switching to something else. And it is kind of, we talked in a pre-call, everybody blames DRM for everything. That's where, if it doesn't work, it's the DRM's fault, which you kind of learn to roll with the punches and say, no, it's not. But that's one of the reasons where, going back to betting, we have been involved in betting. We've been working with Genius Sports on Super Bowl and football betting in general. And you get latency down real quick, real fast, and have as much redundancy as you can possibly stomach, because things can't fail. It's basically, it's as simple as that, especially in a live sporting event where you lost eyes off the TV screen or monitor for a few minutes and you're done. So yeah, things can fail, especially in a world where if you did not place a bet in a span of this 1 second before the kick, then bets are lost and money is gone. And yeah, I can't even we're just a security vendor, Jared. I don't even know how you guys handle everything from A to Z.
That makes two of us.
That's
I
why I
mean,
appreciate. Go ahead, Rob.
sorry, go. Well,
No, go ahead.
if you don't mind me like kind of taking the conversation in this direction, like we've talked a lot here about like some of the challenges that we're seeing with this stuff. I think we'd be remiss not to look at some of the opportunities as well, right? And so like while we have sort of this like difficult sort of technical challenges, et cetera, the upside of this, right, is that if we can get it right, kind of to Jack's point and Olga's, if we can get it right and have this beautiful stream that doesn't crash and the ads are stitched in, frame accurate replacement, and there's no buffering, and the volume is normalized, like you have a beautiful user experience, and ideally if you do it right, you don't have duplication of the ads, you don't have back-to-backs, like you have a nice user experience. It's a beautiful atmosphere for advertisers to be engaged with these audiences at these events that are meaningful to the audiences. And again, if you do it well, when it works well, right, it's a kind of a magical experience. And the other thing that you get out at the end of it is you get all this like reporting, measurement, attribution that's so much better and more fine-grained than anything that you'd ever get in linear, right? It's not a panel. It's like IP addresses and households, right? And like you can do some amazing like outcomes and attribution measurement based on that stuff. I'd love to hear maybe from some of the other folks, like what your experiences are when it worked well, when it worked right, like what's the promise?
So Rob, like we've been live for like 6 or 7 weeks, and the promise that, and we've been very focused on the opportunity, right? Like that's the big bet that we've made. And what we're already seeing is even in a month like October, which isn't the biggest month for hockey in the US, we have increased the audience that is watching hockey games, measured however you like, by many multiples, right? And that is a function of not just of us getting the tech right, but also understanding that audiences have fundamentally shifted away from traditional modes of broadcast to more modern modes of consuming content, and that is their normal. And us showing up out there is not just a function of us saying, hey, this is something cool to do, but this is something we have to do, and we have to do it well. And if we do it well, then we're seeing the sort of outcomes that we're seeing right now, both with audience growth as well as with advertising interest and the sort of revenue that we're generating per game. I mean, that is real, and that is happening today. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah, the other really cool piece of it is the opportunity with respect to like interesting creative executions for buyers, right? Like there's so much more of an interactive experience that you can create with the end user. And I feel like we're just starting to scratch the surface on what's possible here, right? And this is sort of me looking at it from like a standard setting lens a little bit too, but like we're just starting to have some of the protocols in place for like more rich ad interfaces. And like you need more of the various OEMs, the TV and device manufacturers to start like creating support for things like shoppable ads in the stream and stuff like that. Like the promise is for some like really cool tech that would kind of make the experience really engaging for users in the future, I think.
Yeah, but the same cool experience from a when you say interactive, I think VR and stuff like that, 360, and I think that has been done and tried, and I'm curious if anybody's actually trying it right now with Vision Pro or anything else. But I think it's a cool experience as it is. It also takes a little bit away from the like you can't have 4 people in a room watching an event in VR. But when you say an interactive, immersive experience, that's kind of where my brain goes. And I know we've tried that, and I know I've seen really cool experience. Like my dad watched a hockey game like that, but he can only do it by like he had to be there by himself, and somebody had to also make sure he didn't fall off a chair because he was trying to follow the puck and whatnot. But can you do ads in that type of an environment? Like that's where I was trying to figure out if it's even reasonable, or if it's a hockey game in VR, are you actually doing what you would do in real life and put the ads on the side of the rink? How would that even work? And has anybody even pondered that process?
Yeah, I mean at Paramount, we have the Pluto app or Paramount Plus is available in the app stores in Meta or in Apple, so it's there. It's but the consumption is small. This, it's, I wouldn't say the primary use case of, a headset is to watch TV, though you totally can. And our, normal, SSAI executions and everything we tested works, everything's placed in there. I think the experimentation and like getting to like, what is it, Ready Player One, where it's like, all right, let's start putting logos and stuff. I think we gotta wait for scale before you start doing that kind of things. But that's at and I think a lot of media companies, their apps are available. Or you're sitting in like a virtual living room with a couch, and you get the big, like I literally have mine sitting right next to me. Like you got this big thing on your face, sitting there for 2-3 hours with it. It's heavy. You gotta be plugged in. So it's early days, but I think a lot of us do experiment with it.
In terms of the foundations for some of this stuff, I think you can look at some of the in-game like advertising SDKs and stuff. Like there are companies that have developed tech to embed billboards when you're if you're playing a racing game, right, and you're passing by a billboard, and like sell that ad space in real time, like that kind of stuff. Some of the foundations for stitching those things in do exist. But I agree. I think like at this point, sort of the market penetration of any of this, like watching live events in VR is obviously tiny, but you do have a bunch of people sitting in a room watching that screen on a second screen, and right wherever, interacting with a second screen right in front of them. Like that's obviously extremely prevalent, right? And there's all sorts of interesting interactions that you can create there with a device that everyone's got already. I've seen some interesting demos of shoppable ads where like you can even use the TV remote, say, oh, like I'm interested in this, add it to a cart, scan the QR code, and it brings it up on your phone like with your shopping cart preloaded. Like there's some really interesting executions that exist for this kind of thing, and I think we're actually not that far off.
Our perspective on this is that the focus on experience has to be keeping the fan in mind and not the advertiser in mind. And where the brand and the advertiser is concerned, we're sort of looking at it through the lens of how we actually activate audiences for them in a meaningful fashion, right? So the where the two intersect is when the right ad is being shown to the right person in the right way, where it either leads to some sort of lift, brand lift, or what have you. And our conversations with brands is now about us being able to own our first party data and activate it in a really interesting fashion and creating an experience out of that, which again serves that fan. Because if that person is not paying attention to what you're doing, no matter what feature you're introducing into the mix, which serves an advertiser's interest, doesn't help the advertiser, doesn't help the service, and turns off a fan. Right. So that interesting sort of interplay between the fan experience and activating an audience for an advertiser is a really interesting always is a really interesting conversation. That's an ongoing conversation for us.
Well, that's a great segue to another one of the topics, just overall trends in the sports and just generally live streaming industry. Jack, I know you and I had talked about everything from Netflix now getting live rights to UFC. Is there any, as you look ahead, what are you most excited about for 2025 as far as trends?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely obviously the underlying trend, or the trend that everyone is aware of, I suppose, is like the greater involvement and investment by sort of digital first streaming platforms on sports rights. I think in 2024 we estimate that in total streaming platforms have spent over $10 billion on sports rights. Almost more than half of that actually coming from the United States. In the US, we're expecting that to reach almost 7 billion by 2026. So obviously that trend is growing. What has fueled some of that investment? I mean, it's a number of factors as always. It's been, some of the sort of stagnation in subscriber growth and the sort of the need for diversification in the content offering. The realization, I suppose, that there's maybe an element of untapped market when it comes to streaming, considering that there's a sizable chunk, according to our survey data, 36% of sports fans in the United States say they don't essentially care much about other genres. They only care about sports. And, for as long as the likes of Netflix, Prime Video obviously has been involved in sports for a long, long time, but, the likes of YouTube, Peacock, etc., weren't maybe necessarily catering to them before, going hard on sports. So now this audience can be better targeted. But finally, it's the advertising. And obviously, we've seen, all the major streamers launch and introduce an ad tier and sort of an ad-funded plan. And we're seeing that advertising revenue becoming more and more salient, more and more important for the way in which streaming platforms monetize their content portfolio as a whole, and live rights and live sports obviously are huge and can drive huge consumption. Advertising, live sports is also a very, very effective way of targeting somewhat predictable audiences with content, as the streaming market gets more and more saturated with live sports. It can sort of predict, based on like the size, the fan base essentially to an event, what kind of audiences you might be able to attract. And that's particularly useful at a time when streaming platforms are sort of and studios are sort of thinking more about profitability of their streaming platforms, I suppose.
Oh, that's great. As far as, so why don't we go around the table, as far talking about, again, trends 2025, we're talking about VR. I think, I've been a big fan of that for a long time, but I still think we have a few years out. One of the things when is streaming going to surpass linear? What are your opinions about 2025 and beyond? Anyone take the horn. What are you excited about for 2025? What do you think might finally hit in 2025 that we've been waiting for a long time?
I can go first. I think we've already made a bet at Victory Plus that sports should be free, and that includes all sports. And that bet, which also means that we've made a bet on ad tech, on how we can monetize sports content using advertising, how we can grow audiences differently. The third bet that we've made is, for the most part, we're making everything only available on a stream. We're not sort of having a linear play on the side. We're running an experiment with the Ducks today, where we're showing some Ducks games on a linear network out there, but we're also streaming it. And with the Dallas Stars, we're showing all of it only on the streaming service. And the fourth bet, I think, which is an interesting one, is that for folks like us, we've moved into production as well, because we're the one producing the games now. That particular combination of events, right, where we're not taking the stream from somebody else and putting it out there, we're producing the game, we're running the tech here actually. So being fully vertically integrated is for me an interesting bet, and sort of speaks to the cyclical nature of the industry that we operate in, where you go from being vertically integrated to being sort of, fragmenting and sort of letting specialists come in and do little pieces, and then you'll go back to that. And I think at least we'll sort of see how this bet plays out in real time over the next few years, and I'm sure I'll hear from you guys on what we do well and what we do badly. But there is a inherent bet in there that says that make sports free, make it available, let ad dollars sort of drive revenue for you, right? And be streaming first, and in most cases, only streaming with no linear or cable content.
Jared, coming from I don't want to say legacy because I love Paramount, but from a well-established company, what's your take on that same thread?
Look, linear is still king when it comes to like the amount of people who are watching. You think about like the Super Bowl we had we did in January. You had over 100 million people. I forgot the exact number. It was record breaking. The vast majority of it was still on traditional linear viewership from a MVPD or a virtual MVPD. While YouTube TV and Comcast, one's of course a lot more established. There's hardware involved. YouTube TV is you kind of go and come and go as you want, but it's still the traditional TV model. vast majority. It was there. Paramount Plus record days and numbers, but still in comparison to traditional linear, it's still, you got a big gap, but it's, every year it's shrinking. So I mean, that vehicle of traditional TV is still important, still a big money maker, and still just works. The stuff we had to do for Paramount Plus to get ready for the Super Bowl took us a year to get ready. That's not to say linear isn't taking a long time to do an event like that. I was walking around the compound before that Sunday, and 25 trucks and this and that, and they ask, hey, what do you guys have in digital? Be like, I go to freewill.com and I log in, and what happens if that breaks? Being like, I don't know. Not that they break or whatever. But it's just a very different mentality of the appreciation. I think I have gained over 2 decades of what linear is, how it works, and then how do you try to apply that to digital. But I think there's still a long way to go for digital to live up to that TV like standard.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons, and you pointed at it, right, that people still kind of default to the set-top box or whatever, is like, that's going to work. You don't want to take a risk on like, what might be the most important game of the year for you to spectate. They're like, the stream might crash. Like, screw that. Let's just watch it on a cable box and make sure that we get it. I think that's a confidence thing, right? That like, we're going to keep on building trust in users in the audience base, that like you can trust a stream, and it's going to be reliable, and you're not going to miss the game. You're not going to miss the critical moments. You're not going to be left like fumbling, try to find some other way to watch it when, quarter of the way through the game, the stream breaks, right? So like, I think that's something that, we'll obviously continue to progress towards. And just started quickly to build on Narendra's point. Appreciate you taking a bet on the ad tech piece of it. I think it's the right bet on programmatic monetization of these things. I think it's the right bet. And from my perspective, talking about sort of like trends and where things are headed, I think there's 2 things that are really interesting. One is, as these events progress, and as we spend time, focusing, looking at them, studying them, right? We looked at the US VP debate, and we looked at, election coverage and all this stuff. And how did we, as an ad exchange, how did we experience all of these events? There were so many learnings that we took away from each of these events, so that, each time we serve ads for one of these events, we're iterating, we're getting better and better. I think my prediction is we'll see next year, we'll probably, finally get to a point where we can say like, yeah, ad tech is, within the next year or so, ad tech is pretty reliable at being able to like return ads. Maybe not, like fill up every, every available position. Maybe you'll still see some slate here and there, but at least we'll be able to reliably say like, we're not crashing streams. We're able to return demand. We're able to make every impression opportunity actually available to a buyer to bid on. I think we're getting closer to that stage. So I think that's sort of like one. Yeah, go ahead, Jared. Tell me
well, I think I'm glad we're disagreeing a little bit on it. Like, you're not wrong in that, like, we're progressing on it, but I think the move from traditional linear to streaming for a debate, a Super Bowl, I think that move is happening at a much faster pace, and ad tech isn't fast enough to keep up with it. And it keeps coming back to like, it comes down to the core. What are the core things that I know we're working on the IAB Tech Lab of like, how do we do it? It's like, ad tech can't handle concurrency. It can't.
Today,
leading up to today, and it's like, given this has been an ongoing, this isn't a new problem. There's been large scale live events for years. Primarily it was always Super Bowls, but then like as things progress, I'll always use Paramount as the best examples. We have UEFA, we've got live streaming news. We keep running into the same problems, like, hey, can you handle this QPS on this event? And they're like, please no, don't call us. Put caps, put bid caps on this, because it's not just a bid for a user, there's a whole pod, and it's open RTB 2.6 adoption, or are you still on 2.5? Like the users are running. I want to say we're kind of you know, like the 2 or 3 year olds, you know, we're kind of crawling, we're walking ish, but we're not moving fast. We're not able to move fast enough just on handling the scale of the events, let alone the
Yeah.
ad selection of those events and the feedback loop, because a lot of this stuff is still display ad tech based, not 100%
Yeah.
video.
See,
Yeah.
and,
Look,
and I want to disagree with Rob on a whole other story. Most people, when they go to watch Super Bowl, they don't go, oh my God, I'm going to watch it on TV because the stream is not going to break or whatnot. I'm going to watch it on TV because I have a big TV. I can have my family here. We can order food and whatnot and watch it together. It's much harder to watch it on an iPad or whatever streaming.
no one's watching these things on iPads,
No,
right? Like everyone's got smart TVs.
But it's much harder to do it in some sort of a streaming environment. Granted, my personal pet peeve of the week is that, yes, I will fess up to the fact that I still use TiVo, or used to until Thursday when they cut me off because my cable card no longer works. Do not even get me started on that whole conversation. But I am being offered a choice of the cable company's set-top box or Apple TV. Those are not my two choices, and we all understand if I go Apple TV, I'm now going digital, which is a whole other conversation that I don't want to have here. But that might move us more into the direction of digital. But at the end of the day, there's something about it's not even a lean back experience of in front of a TV and watching cable. It's the fact that it's a big TV, it's a living room, and we can all watch it. And it took me a minute to figure out how they're going to pipe cable into the Apple TV, and I'm in the industry. And I was thinking about my parents or my friends who are, not experts in all of this.
So,
you're still more comfortable with this stupid set-top box in front of you, and that's where you're going to get your TV.
so Olga, let me give you an example. And this is real data that and I'm sure Jared can speak to this as well. But of everybody who's watching a Dallas Stars game on Victory Plus today, 8 out of 10 of them are watching it on a TV, on a connected TV of some sort of the other, right? The 2 of them, and we can track this, right? We know where they are. The 2 that are not watching it on a connected TV are not at home at that point, right? They're out and about. So the 2 to 3 that are sort of like, or they're watching something else on TV and they're watching this on their phone. So there's a college game on there and they're watching, they're still watching the Stars game on their phone. That's one. The other interesting data point in there is that the traditional hockey cable / linear hockey viewer is an older audience, right? And they've all figured out how to watch this because we have grown that audience not 2x or 3x, but many multiples. And therein in there is a sort of a lesson for us to sort of recognize that the pipe that comes into the house doesn't matter to the user. The device on which they're watching it, to your point, does matter to the user. And as long as that viewing experience is as friction-free as possible, we're sort of there. But to Jared and Rob's earlier point, I think for me, we're solving for way too much to get ad tech to work as a publisher. Right? And I don't know, Jared, if you agree with me or not. But the simple fact that there is no convention around the content, that the live game that's on, and there's no defined method for us to say within the bid request, this is the live game, this is the sport, these are the 2 teams that are playing against each other, right? Like the fact that doesn't exist till date is certainly something that should give us some pause for concern.
So good news there. Especially Rob, there's a IAB Tech Lab has an advanced TV committee. That exact topic is
It's
being discussed. However,
It is.
it's against the law, technically,
Right.
to communicate that, because the Video Privacy Protection Act from 1986, I think, is when it was from, preclude you from doing that, depending on which lawyer you're talking to. But yeah, like that, like I think CJ, you alluded to earlier on your intro, it's like, what are we doing to fix stuff? What's 2025 coming along? There's a lot of stuff at the IAB Tech Lab, especially around live. I want to say live sports, live news, whatever. It's live.
All live, yeah.
How do you handle communicating concurrency, so people can scale their systems up and you don't like
That's right.
bring ad tech down. How do you communicate signals? Is this live? Is it on demand? You know, there's efforts coming along to address this, because I think one of the, you know, the two big things we're trying to solve is systems don't fall down and time out. And the other big thing around, you know, metadata and concurrency is buy-side platforms still struggle with how do you, in a programmatic world, how do you respond, pace, keep track of these, you know, these shark fin events that happen in a day.
Yep.
And outside of, so I'd say, some extreme manual manipulation and how you execute it, we're still on like, I've got $1,000 to spend over a day. I got to spend, you know, X amount per hour, and it's just even daily. Everything's just even daily. It can't. The notion of a shark fin, or I could, or I can tell you between 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. Eastern every single day, viewership spikes in streaming. But bidders in general don't understand that, and they spend all their money at midnight when the day resets, and kind of like can't take advantage of those spikes. So we still have those issues to solve. It gets even worse in live, but it's still a problem even in VOD today, is that pattern of bidding.
Look, they're here too. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm the optimist on this call. There's so many problems, there's so many challenges. Like, the good part here, and this is how an optimist, I suppose, looks at these things, is like, there's so many things that we can fix. Look at all these things that we're going to be able to do better, right? And it's going to be like a system of improvements across a number of different facets of this entire, like, value chain that's going to fix this, right? So yeah, some piece of it is going to be like, everyone's going to learn how to make infrastructure improvements, literally at the like load balancing and like, ad serving services level in their data center. Like, folks will figure that stuff out. We'll have standards and protocol stuff that we'll figure out, right? How can we make it more efficient to signal the availability of large numbers of users in fewer sort of communications between servers, right? So instead of, okay, if I have I don't know, in a metro area, I have 6 million people. Instead of sending out 6 million concurrent, bid requests for everyone who's watching this particular event, are there ways that I can sort of summarize these things and say, hey, I have, X people in this DMA. Are there any national level advertisers who are interested in exposing all of those users at the same time to a particular ad? Things like that, right? There's other interesting things around how do we do like upfronts and programmatic guarantees to like line up and lock in that demand in advance, right? With creatives that are pre-registered, pre-transcoded, ready to go, where all you need in order to actually serve the ad is like, you don't need to do any more bid requests in real time. You already know that demand is locked in. You just hit go and it gets stitched into the stream, right? So there's like so many facets and ways that we can improve this. There are ideas around futures as well. And this is like really kind of a little more dreaming and a little more pie in the sky, but like, can you start to have people actually like lock in demand in advance of these live events? And again, with all the like creative, pre-transcoding and whatever, so that like, you have an order book kind of existing with a whole bunch of demand lined up. And when the event is there, you don't have to start doing a whole bunch of real-time bid requests. You just like play through that order book of like, here's the demand that already exists. So like, I think there are lots of techniques that we can use to like really improve the state of this and make it stand up to the concurrency and to the volumes that we'll see.
No, that's awesome. I think, guys, just a quick time check. We have about 15 minutes left, and there's so much more we could cover on this on all of this. I'd like to take some questions from the audience, if that's all right with everyone. First one, just sticking to tech for a second, because this came up and I haven't even heard of it before, and I think I'm pretty well up to speed on things. From Eric, any thoughts on SGAI, server guided ad insertion in general, or specifically to live sports? Is that something that anyone's touched upon? That was a new acronym that came into my vernacular Friday. So anyone here have any thoughts or where that's at? Who's doing it?
What is it?
Okay,
I haven't heard of it.
So early days. So that's good. It was the first time I had heard it on Friday, and I was just at the Amagi Fast conference and things like that. So Eric, we owe you an answer. More to come. Some other questions that have come up in the chat from Indra. With respect to advertising as the primary revenue source, would you share thoughts on challenges on evolving regulatory landscape as it pertains to data privacy protection? Jared, I know you just touched on VPPA. Else that as we look ahead, that or even deeper into VPPA, where you guys are concerned, what's messing up your day with regulation?
Look, it's a challenge. I think there's one thing we always say. There's the global, national, local. We are a global company. We run a global ad tech stack. Dealing with varying privacy laws at the kind of country level. What we have to do in the US is very different than UK, Ireland, Germany, Australia, France, Italy. I mean, there's a lot of different regulations, at the strict privacy level. You have, of course, GDPR, but you also, I'd even take it a step further of not just privacy, but also like kind of copy laws of like, you have to do this for alcohol in this country, you have to do this for sports betting in Australia is very different. Like, so cobbling all that together at the country level, and then if we we're in the US, so we'll talk about the US. Now you have state laws that have different privacy and different disclosure things. It's you kind of have to work towards the lowest common denominator in a lot of these cases, because ad tech in general isn't very well suited to say, okay, if I'm in this country, or sorry, in this state, do this versus this state versus this state versus this state, especially as we've moved a lot to, I would say programmatic / automation. It's getting more and more challenging by the day, because we don't have a national law that says, okay, build against this, and off you go. California's got this, Washington State's got this for this category. The list goes on and on and on, and it's getting harder and harder to align.
From our perspective, we're starting to see, not just from us, but from a number of partners of ours on the buy side, sell side, more sort of investment in contextual around these things. And so this is more so for like on demand than live events, because like live events, like you kind of know when a massive football game's happening, like you have a pretty good sense of what you're buying, just based on like the network and channel, right? So even if I don't give you show level data, if I don't know which network has rights for the Super Bowl this year, but like if you're buying impressions from that network during that particular time, like you kind of know what you're getting. But there's a lot of sort of interesting contextual signals that exist for this stuff that we can use, right? And that's either things coming in from publishers providing sort of richer contextual signals to be used like throughout the ad tech supply chain, or through for us, for example, like on our marketplaces curation products, third parties bringing in their additional data, enriching bid requests on behalf of buyers to package in interesting and novel ways. The other thing that we have is we have some publishers that are happy to send us, for example, all of the sort of the deep show level data, and allow us to do the packaging of that data and going off and doing demand facilitation, and suppressing those signals from going outbound to the DSPs, right? So in other words, like trusting ad tech sort of to be like an agent of the publisher to do interesting packaging and merchandising of the supply and go off and sell it, while not exposing those signals further to DSPs. And that, again, a lot of it kind of comes down to contextual packaging for seasons and things like that. So we see a lot around that area to still be able to work with the privacy constraints that exist.
As a publisher that was born in the kids and family space, so we run something called Kidoodle TV, which is aimed at kids and families, and therefore we have to be compliant with COPA in the US and so on, right? So we sort of built all our systems within this environment where our data systems had to comply with perhaps the strictest regulations that exist, right? Between that and sort of our evolution into being now entering sports and so on, we've had this innate sort of approach to thinking of architecture within this space as being data first, ad tech second, and stream last. not from a priority perspective, but in how we design the systems that we build. And doing that has allowed us to solve to a fairly large degree to many of the issues that you face within a complex regulatory environment across multiple geographies. In previous lives, I sort of had to deal with GDPR and all of those issues, right? So having that's not going away anytime soon. And as a publisher, we think it is our responsibility not just to be compliant, but to understand what is the opportunity spaces that emerge within any regulatory environment, because there are always opportunities as much as there are challenges. It is the overhead that you have to sort of figure out how to overcome to be able to even start to go after those opportunities, right? So how do we build out first party, zero party sort of data pools that then we can offer up to advertisers in ways which are regulatory compliant, but are still cohorts that advertisers can choose to go after.
No, that's great. I think I'm going to go back to the chat real quick. We've got several questions. I think if anything's not answered for the audience, everyone has our LinkedIn URLs within the chat. So please reach out. I know the RSN, we could probably have a whole session on RSNs and the future of those with Narendra. So let's move a couple quick questions. Any thoughts on non-linear ads with interactivity and navigating to e-commerce in the TV environment, and how IAB is adding these compliances? As far as the IAB, shout out to them for the specs and so forth. Rob and Jared, I know you guys are heavily involved there. Anything that Jared, you just mentioned a couple of initiatives within the group, but anything you want to mention as people are looking ahead at 25 and that you need help?
So I think IAB, as part of this advanced television committee, is also doing an exercise around new formats and trying to just get a glossary of everything that exists today and try to boil it down to like very common themes. Like this isn't the first time the IAB has done this. I mean, I'm an old fart that it's like I was IAB Rising Stars. We did this back with like the pool and Starcom and ad selector. So this is the first time around, but it's been a while. So they're going around again, things like shoppable. It's a very generic term, but that is part of it. A lot of stuff, things that like Transmit Live is doing around picture and L bars, squeeze backs, is a rising format, especially in a live sports environment. Think a soccer match. There's no commercial breaks except for halftime. So it's like it's a natural environment to do hips, squeeze backs, and things of that nature. So in terms of helping, IAB Tech Lab, go to the website. Pretty sure all these committees and things are easily you can find it on the website, and I think there's ways to submit formats and things of that nature to get it into this larger effort that group.
Yeah, I mean, support for some of these things exists. So, for example, there's like CIMID, right, which is sort of a vast adjacent standard for nonlinear ads. The issue with a lot of these things is they don't have at the moment like a ton of adoption. Again, to Jared's point on like the really fractured device landscape and device and operating system landscape. These things, like VAST is pretty much the only thing, or maybe not even VAST, like, some of the streaming protocols like, Dash and HLS, whatever, like those are really the only things that have like completely broad adoption across like, every possible device. So that's the gotcha at this point with any of the nonlinear stuff is once you start running nonlinear ads, you're really starting to narrow down the aperture of where those ads are now going to be like valid and applicable. But
just a quick, we have about 5 minutes left. So what I'd love to do, and Narendra, you'll get you could go next, but as we go through this in the last 5 minutes, I'd love to close out with, and there's a question about DRM, Olga. So actually, I'll start with you. If you could answer that question, and then we'll go around at hot takes. What would you fix tomorrow? What are you passionate about? What do you want to kick and scream about? But Olga, if you don't mind, maybe touching on, is DRM happening in ads yet? We talked about this a little bit, but and what's your hot take for 25?
So for DRM and ads, We don't see so much DRM in ads. I mean, it does make sense if you're doing server-side ads to DRM the stream with the ads, especially if you're doing just-in-time packaging. Basically puts, people attempting to steal your streams in a position where they can't rip out those ads because now that the content's DRM'd. But we're also getting people, and we're working with companies that are DRMing fast channels. Because there's a lot of conversation around the fact that, oh, you don't need DRM, it's fast channel. But at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that content is key. And if you still have to license it, even if it's a fast channel. And if you're, streaming it out in the open and somebody takes it, why would people watch your specific fast channel with your specific ads if you're giving away the content for free to potentially somebody else? So we've definitely worked with companies that are DRMing fast channels. I'm not quite sure if they're DRMing ads within those fast channels. Actually, that's something that we've talked about looking into and actually asking our customers to see how they're actually approaching this topic. But for what would I like to fix, or what would I like to see in 2025? I mean, I'm on the security side of things, right? So if we can figure out how to stop more piracy, how to take down sessions in real time, especially in sports, which is something we're actually working on. But the ability to identify a rogue viewing session and take it down in minutes, not like in 1 minute or 2 minutes, not 5 or 10 or half an hour or whatever, is something that I would love to see. And we're actively working on that, and we'd like to see it come to market.
Fantastic. Narendra, since I cut you off, if you could go next.
No, it answers your question as well. I think if there is anything that I'm really sort of focused on right now, it goes back to my experience deep upstream on the demand side, where I sort of sat inside an ad agency and worked with the largest brands, right? As we think about, we serve two masters. We serve the person who's watching our stuff, and we're serving the person who wants specific outcomes for the money that they're spending on ads that are being seen by this audience. And it is easy to often think of all the formats that are possible without looking at those formats or that availability, that supply that we are creating, without thinking about the effectiveness of what gets delivered to this audience for the advertiser, right? And building out a layer of effectiveness, which is not just a function of the metrics that can be measured, but measurement models that sort of scale up those metrics into metrics that matter, I think is something that we have to start to wrestle with sooner rather than later, as more people start to watch stuff over streams rather than on linear, where this is a solved problem, to be clear.
Jack, Rob, or Jared, lightning round. I want everyone to be able to chime in, but in 1 to 2 sentences, what's your hot take?
Let's do it in that order. Jack, why don't you go first?
Sure, thanks. I think I'd like rights holders to sort of think a bit more holistically about the opportunity that streaming offers them. I don't want rights holders to only think about streaming in terms of a paycheck, but rather in an investment in making their product itself better, or reach more audiences, or reach audiences in new ways.
If I had a magic wand, I would sort of get rid of the baggage that Jared pointed out in terms of, like, all of ad tech came from the web, and say, like, if we were starting from a fresh slate, just thinking about how do we monetize TV, it'd be really fun to have that exercise of not having to worry about what exists already and just start from a green field. I know I'm not going to get that, but that would be fun. The other thing I would wish for is not to just let Jared have the last word, but here we go. Jared gets the last word.
Yeah. I'm pragmatic at, like, what can we actually achieve in 2025, and I will be doing a panel on this in a couple of weeks. Creative framework from the IAB, using ad ID, Clearcast, solving that core problem on creative metadata, so we have a much better user experience, just like you see on TV.
Hey, Rob, so I'm going to give you your wish. Jared is not going to get the last word, but I do agree with you. There are a lot of things legally I think we should solve for, why are there certain laws that force us into certain contracts, and do they really make sense in digital versus linear? But yeah, that would be my dream, to actually get that solved, that as well.
Well, and I'm not gonna get the last word because I'm assuming I see the infamous Evan Shapiro on the screen. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining the panel. Thank you for everyone that's been watching and answer their questions. And I'm going to toss it to Evan.
Did get the last word. See that? Thank you. That was an amazing panel. Thank you all very much. I want to thank everybody for sticking around. This is a great panel, great audience, great questions all around. Just to get to our winner, the music was the theme from the Anderson tapes by Quincy Jones, and the winner is Zia Wang. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Congratulations. We have another panel coming up in just about half an hour. That will be Engage and Grow: How to Succeed with Interactive Live Streaming. That's in just about a half an hour from now. Once again, all of the content from this week will be up on the Streaming Media YouTube page. The link is in the chat right now, so bookmark it and look for it next week. And we'll see you in about a half an hour. Great job, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you
joining
all.
us.
See you.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.